Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about battles in the beginnings of the Constitution. We don't really talk about the fact of the Constitution and how it came about. Many people talk about the Constitution, but the fact is that the gathering in Philadelphia, which was started after the Annapolis Convention was such a disaster, was not to create a constitution, a new government. It was to amend and repair the Articles of Confederation. And you had great, great supporters of the Articles of Confederation, perhaps none so brilliant an orator as Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry was totally against anything that gave the federal government power, anything that gave the central government the opportunity to tax. Many people felt that each state should remain its own sovereign country, and that these upstarts like Hamilton and Madison were trying to create another revolution. Now, of course, history, tells us how we got our Constitution, but getting it was not easy. Hamilton was part of the delegation from New York. He spoke. He had his ideas. He gave us visions of things he wanted, and they were not very good, to be honest. He's a brilliant man, but even brilliant people make rather great mistakes. He wanted to create something almost like a House of Lords instead of a Congress, which you would be appointed for life. I can't fathom that. That is just so much against the whole concept of creating this democratic republic. Fortunately, we had James Madison. James Madison we call the father of the Constitution, and there's a reason for it. He was the most brilliant of all of those that gathered in Philadelphia in 1787. He was the most learned. He was the most eager to explore and learn. He didn't come with set convictions. Of course, he had certain ones, but he didn't come with a closed book. His book was open, and he studied. Thomas Jefferson sent him tons and tons of books to read. And of course, he studied ancient governments, Hume, and also read works on the Greek form of government, the Greek histories, the Roman histories. So many of the great historians and so many who talked about government and how to enhance, how to protect, how to overthrow, how to change, because everything was new. Every day was a new movement when it came to the Constitution, because they were treading ground that had never been tread before. The American Constitution is an amazingly unique document. And also, they had just come off a revolution. Think about this. 1783, of course, the Treaty of Paris is signed. This is just 4 years later. And we had had several years of the Articles of Confederation, which nearly destroyed this country. And so they had to come up with a lot of ideas and a lot of compromise. And there was moments that they almost got into fisticuffs. It was that much angst. You had, Mason, you had Henry, totally against anything that you might call them the anti-federalists. And they were totally against this Constitution. They wanted the Articles of Confederation. In fact, Patrick Henry left the convention. Alexander Hamilton left the convention. He wasn't happy either. And so you had all of these individuals that were so angry and so troubled and so concerned that they were stepping into anarchy. Well, the fortunate thing was, once again, you had Madison. You also had some very, very important. You had Roger Sherman from Connecticut. Very important. You had Benjamin Franklin. Not at this point of great trust, of great ideas, but a calming, great intellectual who could throw out nuggets of wisdom. And then, of course, you had George Washington, who was following along to a degree with Madison. He was not the most educated of the batch, but smart enough to make sure he didn't say anything. But his presence sanctified the document. That's a very important thing if you think about it. The Articles of Confederation is something very, very different. But the Constitution was created under who was the president of the Constitutional Convention, George Washington. It was created under his supervision. That's what made it survive. You know, it's an interesting thing when you think about it, our Constitution. And to think that here we are in the year 2018, and here we are debating, arguing about rights. Do you realize that when the Constitutional Convention was going on, one of Patrick Henry's demands was a Bill of Rights? He wanted the Bill of Rights before a Constitution was approved, and Madison said, no, it'll sully the whole situation. He said, I promise you I'll do it. But Henry refused. It's an interesting thing. Patrick Henry had his views. And of course, he would eventually adopt the Constitution. He would eventually come to understand it. But in its formation, he was totally and completely against it. And so today, here we are, so many years later. We're still fighting over the Constitution. It's the oldest Constitution of a democratic republic around. It's incredible. And to think what those individuals would say if they could come back to life and see this. What would be their views? What would be their thoughts? I think they would be shocked. I mean, they would be blown away that actually this novel idea. You have to remember, we have the Declaration of Independence, which was a statement. It wasn't truly creating a government. It wasn't a government document. But here was a document that was creating a nation, creating an ideal, creating laws. And these ideas, these laws, these concepts have transcended the centuries and are as relevant today. And it is as relevant today as when it was first written. That's an amazing thing. Just something I wanted to mention about the wonder of our Constitution and the amazing gathering of intellectuals that actually made it happen. And today, a lot of times people say it was a miracle. It was a gathering of demagogues. That's what Jefferson used to say. But the amazing thing is, perhaps we should use the word that James Madison used when talking about creating a constitution and finally getting it together. He called it a miracle. because he never thought it would actually happen, because there was so much infighting. But finally, they did it. So, whenever you sit there and have a conversation with someone about our Constitution or about our Bill of Rights and the various amendments to the Constitution, remember, it wasn't a bed of roses creating that Constitution. Remember, it was a great battle creating that Constitution. And it's a living, breathing Constitution that ages with us. And even to this day, if you think about it, the battles that we have, as I said before, are the same battles they had then. Our toys have changed. Our technology has changed. But human nature and the understandings of it have not. And that was because James Madison understood that a revolution doesn't change humanity. Humanity stays the same, and a constitution has to reflect that. Thank you.